Well, if there was any doubt in your mind that we live in a simulation, let me remove that doubt because Netflix has just released this new TV series called He's Expecting. And yep, you you can already tell what it is just by looking at this. This is pretty much I think this video is going to be a more difficult one for me to do because I'm still trying to process exactly what this is, but I guess we'll get through this together. This appears to be a TV series about a man and a man, like not a transgender woman, but an actual man who finds himself with an unexpected pregnancy. And this is Netflix's latest, woke television propaganda or whatever you want to call it. Or maybe it's just somebody, coming up with an interesting idea, something they want to explore, right? I really don't know. I don't claim to know what their motives are over there at Netflix, but one thing that I found interesting was this idea. This has already been done before. There was a movie called Junior, and I actually just finished watching this movie just before recording this, just to kind of see what this was about. And this was a comedy, and you can tell it's a comedy just by the cover, right? Basically, what the premise is, Danny DeVito there, he decides that it would be a good idea for Arnold Schwarzenegger to experiment on himself by injecting himself with this mystery drug that makes you pregnant. So, and he decides he actually likes it. He likes being pregnant, and comedy ensues, right? And honestly, it was a little uncomfortable. This kind of thing kind of reminded me of those movies you see, like where there's an action hero and he's avoiding being killed by some bad guys or whatever, and then the scene cuts every 10 seconds. It cuts to like the pregnant woman in the hospital, giving birth, and it has to keep jumping back and forth between these two really high pressure scenes, right? And then it ends with the action hero gets away, and then the baby is born, and you hear the crying, right? And that, I don't know, I maybe I'm a typical sexist, misogynist or whatever, but those scenes always make me a little uncomfortable just because it's like, I don't know. But that's kind of what this movie reminded me of. But it was all comedy. And the thing that stood out to me is the big difference, right? When I saw this, I saw the trailer for this here, and this as far as I can tell, I have not watched this series. It just came out yesterday. I don't think I will watch it, but as far as I can tell, the man doesn't. He just gets this, like, he just finds himself pregnant mysteriously, which that doesn't. I don't really know what they're gonna do, how they're gonna handle the writing on that. But in this movie, they at least they put in the effort of saying, okay, it's this experimental drug that we're going to inject you with, right? And it's not something, it's a completely artificial sort of experiment. Whereas in this case, it's we've reached a great era where men can give birth. Like, the Mother Nature just came out of nowhere and said, okay, we're going to balance the gameplay here in the video game of life, and we're gonna upgrade the male models add this feature. So I don't really know what that's about. And this is the reason I call this kind of like propaganda is not, I haven't seen it, so I guess I shouldn't be judging it too harshly. But when you read, I mean, you read some of what, it's about, it's there. It says drama here, TV drama. I think on the trailer it says comedy, social comedy, thought provoking. So is it drama or is it comedy? Is it social commentary? I don't know what this is supposed to be, but it kind of just seems a little creepy to me. Like this is somebody who has some very weird kind of interests, which is reminiscent, of course, of a couple years ago when Netflix came out with this. I forgot if this was a movie or a TV show. And this obviously raised a lot of criticism against Netflix because, I mean, just look at it. This is not something that should be. I don't even feel comfortable talking about this, honestly. But yeah, so it just seems like they have a lot of strange ideas. But that being said, I'm completely in support of free speech and freedom of expression. So I am not against them making legal content like this. I just think that I think it's very strange, not just the content of this show, but the fact that they would even make this right now when we're seeing articles like this talking about how Netflix is losing subscribers and, people are switching to other streaming services, or they're just switching to platforms like YouTube and of course Odyssey, where you can watch content for free. And I really think this is kind of a symptom, or not really a symptom, but maybe that's the most appropriate word I can think of at the moment. This is really a result of this trend that we've had during the past decade. And by that I mean the 2010s, which really was kind of the start of, the kind of SJW, really hardcore feminists kind of trend that really started, I think it started in colleges. And I happened to be in college during that time. And I remember slowly, semester after semester, more and more of this, kind of unreasonable mentality. And I don't mean, women's rights is unreasonable. Obviously, it was much crazier than that. I mean, I had a class, no joke, I had a class where the teacher divided us by race, literally put us on separate sides of the classroom. And this was supposed to be some kind of, social, I don't know what you call it, like not a social experiment, but basically a demonstration kind of thing, where somehow the message was that, I don't know, society is racist or something like that. But I don't know. I could do an entirely different video on that subject, I guess. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that these things always seem to come in trends. If you look at the U.S. Decade by decade, there's always some very kind of wild group, like you had the hippie movements, I actually liked the hippie movement. They were very anti-war. They had the Vietnam War going on, and they were very against this conflict that the U.S. kind of seemed needlessly involved in. I think they had at least reasonable opinions on that. And then then you just had this goth movement. I think this was 90s or early 2000s. This kind of died out recently. I don't really know what this was about, and now, now we have the SJW thing, or now they're calling it the woke movement, which I don't know if am I the only one? I thought the woke used to apply to more of like the super conservative people when they were supporting Trump and they said, "Oh, we're woke. Everybody's asleep, but we're awake, right?" But now it seems to apply to literally the polar opposite. But anyway, the reason I bring up Trump is because I think this is also kind of a good indicator of sort of the counterculture, I guess you would call it, where you have all of these people who are very pro sensitivity and very anti criticism, anti any kind of offense, things that bring them bad feelings and stuff like that. And then you have people who just are sick of it, just sick and tired of all of the walking on eggshells and all of the unreasonable kind of demands. And so we ended up with President Donald Trump. And I think most people kind of, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I think most people kind of agree that that's sort of how that happened, right? People were just fed up, sick and tired of all the finger waving and all this stuff, right? So now that he's no longer president, I guess maybe Netflix thinks now it's time to start rolling out the woke television shows where we have pregnant men and you know whatever this is and stuff like this, and the culture continues, right? The counterculture is over, and we're going to continue with this SJW sort of like this is the majority now, and this is how Netflix is going to cater, or if you prefer the word pander, to this crowd. But it doesn't seem that this is working. And you can see, I'm sure maybe you've already seen this, but just 2 days ago, Netflix had this massive drop in their stock. And this was only 1 day before this show came out. So would it really be a huge stretch to say these things are related? I don't know. It's not really what people are saying in these news articles. They're kind of just saying Netflix is too expensive. These other programs are cheaper. They have better content. And by content, they don't mean, you know, that these programs, because these other big tech companies, they have some of their own kind of weird content like this as well, I think. But I don't know. They seem to kind of be pointing in that direction. But this is not me saying that Netflix is bad by any means. I actually think Netflix has a lot of great content. And I also don't think that this is bad because one thing I didn't mention, but it's pretty obvious from looking at this, this is actually filmed in Japan and all the actors are Japanese. And, you know, I think this is something kind of cool that Netflix does because, you know, if you've seen, I'm sure you've probably watched Squid Game or at least heard of it. This is filmed and produced in South Korea. And then there's another lesser known show that I really liked called 3%, which is filmed and produced in Brazil. I think this is something really cool that Netflix does because these are countries that maybe South Korea gets a lot of marketing, kind of. A lot of people are interested in South Korea. I think it started with kind of their K-pop stuff that a lot of people got into, and of course, can't forget the Gangnam Style. But then you have shows like this that I think people watch, and they kind of get introduced to this other country that is very different, and I think that's a very positive thing because mostly watching shows on television, especially if you live in the U.S., you're mostly just getting your own culture. If you live in Europe, then you're probably mostly getting American shows and movies. So you're not really getting exposed to these other countries. And I think this is something worth doing. Just pick a show from a country that seems interesting. honestly, for me, I was not interested in Brazil much at all, just because I hadn't heard much about it, didn't really know. I mean, I know it's a country with a lot of people living right on the coast, even though they have this massive territory that goes way into the Amazon rainforest. But beyond that, I really didn't know much about it. I still don't think I know much about it, but all of these locations where they filmed this show are as far as I know, all of them are in Brazil, and they're really, really gorgeous scenery and locations and everything. And it was a really cool show. I don't know, but that got me interested in Brazil. And then, of course, there's other shows. Probably you probably heard of, as it's called in the U.S., Money Heist, but it's actually the House of Paper, La Casa de Papel. That's a show that comes from Spain. So really, Netflix is kind of going all around the world and letting other countries. It's not like Hollywood where it's all kind of centered on the U.S. Even centered on California. A lot of these movies and TV shows that come out of there take place in California, and it's really I think maybe that's another thing people are tired of. Not everybody wants to watch all of their content from the same location, I think. And maybe people from Europe, especially, probably tired of watching American content. So it's nice to see that they're doing this. And I would say if I could give Netflix my opinion, I would tell them to focus more on this aspect of it and maybe a little less on this kind of thing, because most people aren't going to see this and think, "Ooh, this is so socially conscious. Wow, they're really breaking boundaries here." I think most people are going to see this and go, "What? A pregnant dude? Ha! Are you kidding me?" And then that's that's as far as it's going to go. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this.